Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and it's time to talk Chargeblade. For this video, there will be three main builds for you to consider. A raw build, which in Wilds basically means raw and status because it's free and amazing. There will be a build for all 5 elements you'll use with one set because it's a fantastic combination for that. And I'm also going to highlight at the end a cool option with the skill convert element. So please use the timestamps to go to the parts you care about or maybe come back to later. These builds have been carefully considered over actually multiple weeks of play. Since we're lucky enough to have early access, we've had over 2 weeks before the launch to get really comfortable in the endgame. We have discussed and checked every skill and the real values behind them together, also with other great creators. But yes, we've been through a lot of our own testing. But I want you to know that what I'm presenting to you today isn't just my work. There's been a combination of testing and conversations that went into this. The ultimate decision on these sets was by Josh, our ultra monster hunter veteran of the channel of course, and he's kindly done the math for us today. Naturally, I've been part of it with a back and forth for Chargeblade, but really, I'm just presenting you the information that's been concluded, so full credit to Josh. So with that said, let's begin with the raw and status build. So for a raw weapon, you're going to go with an Artian weapon, and that probably doesn't come as much of a shock at this point to you because for most weapons it's just the case, and for Chargeblade that's definitely no different. When you take a Chargeblade and just make a raw one, which means you're going to take multiple infusions of different kinds, so you make sure it's actually going to be a raw, and then let's just make them all attack infusions. The base raw there is 205. Now if you were to reinforce this weapon with 4 attack, which is going to be the goal by the way, that's going to give it 5 per, and we're going to have 4 of them, so an extra 20. So that brings your base raw to 225. Then just add the white sharpness multiplier because these weapons come with white sharpness. That's a 32% increase. So 225 raw times 32%, that's 297 effective raw damage. That alone is higher than any other base weapon before we even think about other skills. Not to mention, you get these 3 slot offensive decoration slots, which is pretty insane. It's pretty relevant. A cool detail about any weapon of this nature though, is the fact that why just go straight raw when you could just put some status into it? So what's changed here? Nothing. We have 205 base attack before we do any of the boosts, just as before. But now we have 100 paralysis. If you want like the max DPS option, blast is going to be a great choice. We still have 205 base attack, but then there's 150 blast there. So this is why raw plus status is so good and why Artian weapons are just kind of the obvious choice. But I just highlighted your 2 main status options. That's paralysis and blast. Now blast is technically going to give you more DPS just off the back of the effect occurring, but paralysis is a lot more user friendly. That hard stun on a monster could be really helpful to get some extra burst out, especially for Chargeblade. And then for monsters like Gore, you know, when the feelers are exposed, that's going to be amazing. So you choose what you prefer, but I think a more user-friendly experience is paralysis, so I might recommend that to you. So what's your reinforcement goals here? You've done 3 attack boost and 3 of the main status that you've chosen, in my case paralysis. What are you aiming for the reinforced rolls? Well, it's these. 4 attack boost, 1 sharpness boost. That's your goal. That's going to add 20 raw to the base, and then obviously the nice sharpness boost. That's how we're achieving that base of 225 raw. This is perfect though, and is pretty hard to attain. I put a lot of time into just getting one of these, and as you'll see with my element options, I don't have a perfect raw with that. So my advice is to aim for say 3 attack, and then either 1 or 2 sharpness boost. Element's not going to be that relevant, it's just going to increase your status. An affinity will be completely wasted, so you don't want any of that. But this is your kind of long-term goal. Now here are your offensive decorations in the weapon. We have 3 critical boost, magazine / attack, and razor sharp. This is not optimal. That is because I just don't have the perfect decorations, and not many people right now will. You cannot get critical boost and something else, so 3 critical boost is the goal. You're definitely going to want 2 levels of load shells, as we'll soon explain, but what goes with that is going to be based on what you have. Some attack boost is really nice, but maybe you'll go with load shells handicraft or something else with some utility. Whatever you've got. The most important thing here though is load shells. Load shells at level 2 increases the vial reloading speed, but also you get 5 vial charges when you hit yellow gauge. Let me show you what that means. As I'm building up these charges to power up the vials, we're going to hit yellow before we hit red. Normally, you'd need red vials to get all 5 filled, but thanks to load shells, with yellow, I fill all 5, so that's significantly faster, isn't it? However, there's an incredible effect that still makes it kind of worth to go for red vials in a lot of situations. So let me just do that. So there's red vials. Instead of filling 5, we overcharge them, which is going to increase the damage you're dealing with power axe, and even more so with any SAEDs you feel like throwing out. So it's kind of a non-negotiable. You need that in your charge blade. The other thing we're going to need, of course, is Razor Sharp, which is just phenomenal. Razor Sharp at level 3 means every attack that you're doing has a 50% chance of losing 0 sharpness. Essentially, this plus that 1 level of sharpness should mean you're never having to use a whetstone for a hunt. You can indeed get Razor Sharp plus another skill, so something of convenience like maybe a bit of focus or handicraft, that'd be amazing, but I just don't have anything as good as that yet. But now let's run down the list of gear that we're running, the skills that come with it, and why. Firstly, we have Guardian Fulgur for the helm in beta version. This comes with 2 levels of Agitator, and we actually go for 5 Agitator, just like you might have seen the speedrunners doing, as we'll explain. In the chest, we have arkveld, again in beta. We have the Guardian arkveld gloves, again in beta. We have the Gore waist and the Gore legs, both in beta. From that, we're getting a level of weakness exploit, 2 more on the gloves, some constitution, 1 level of antivirus. But what's actually important here is the set bonus for Gore. The set bonus infects you with frenzy when against large monsters. And at the 4-piece version, you actually get even more perks, but we only have a 2-piece here. Basically, this is going to give you frenzy, and when you clear frenzy, you get buffs. And if you combine this with the antivirus skill, which we are, this is going to greatly increase the recovery rate that we have after contracting the frenzy, so we're much more likely to cleanse it in time. And then it slaps on an extra 15% affinity. Now, the tooltips do seem to be incorrect about this, but what you need to take away from this is pretty simple. It's going to equate to a total 25% affinity after you cleanse it using antivirus. So 25% straight affinity is amazing. You're going to see in a lot of builds that either 2 Gore or even 4 Gore is incredibly common because of that. Next, these are our decorations to achieve the skill list that you see now. Starting with Weakness Exploit. Weakness Exploit increases the affinity of attacks that exploit a monster's weak point and wounds. At level 5 like we have, attacks that hit weak points have 30% increased affinity with an extra 20% on wounds. That is a lot of affinity from one skill. Next we have Constitution, which is just going to help with your stamina management, which is going to be important because we are running, of course, Maximum Might. So let's explain that next. Maximum Might will increase your affinity if stamina is kept full for a period of time. That is 2 seconds. Level 3 like we have, that's just 30% affinity while it's active, which is absolutely insane. So how are we achieving that uptime of Maximum Might with this weapon? Well, you need to think about the movement that this weapon has. Alongside focus mode having that magnetism effect, you can move forward and press triangle for a dash slam. You can move forward and press circle for a rushing element discharge. The distances that you make with these 2 attacks is incredible, and it means you don't actually have to roll. If you're about to get hit, you might not actually want to roll, you want to transform and guard point it, or often perfect guard instead. Activating power axe, maintaining that buff. In fact, when you're dealing with the monster and it's active, a lot of it is about punishing various startup or wind-up times on an attack, as well as the recovery times after it's attacked. So this weapon's amazing for that because you can deal some damage to a target in the wind-up frames of its attack, then evade the attack with a moving attack, and now it's recovering, you continue into the next part of your combo. And as it begins to turn around, does a tail slam, you're already back to the head, you're moving to the next location. Maybe you can't move around like this anymore, you go for the block. I have a whole guide on this weapon, but yeah, basically, none of what I'm doing costs stamina, even when you're in shield mode. If you're in focus mode, you don't even need to combo to do Fade Slash. Where normally you'd need to do an attack, then circle to Fade Slash, again, 0 stamina movement. So with this weapon, you can absolutely maintain Maximum Might for the majority of the fight. And let's say you lose it, well in 2 seconds it's back anyway. Next up then, let's talk about Agitator. This is something you're seeing a lot of the speedrunners use. How it works is basically the monster becomes enraged, and while it's enraged you get this big bonus. At level 5 like we have, that's plus 20 raw and then 15% affinity. Now on average, for a normal hunt, that's going to be about half the hunt. So about half the hunt you're getting this bonus. If you're a speedrunner, let's say the fight lasts 2 minutes, you're activating the enrage basically instantly or very quickly. Then, while the monster's in rage, you kill it. So that's up the whole time. Definitely different for a normal player, right? But for the Raw set, it works very well, and is ultimately our alternative to burst. So let's quickly address the elephant in the room. Why no burst? This is an amazing skill for Charge Blade because when you've actually got Power Axe mode going and say some vials, you're going to do the physical hit, the vial pop, and 4 ticks of the chainsaw, building up burst super quick. Not to mention your focus mode strike chainsaw, that's a lot of hits. The problem is that this is going to give you attack and element attack, and we're not using element, it's not relevant here. Most of this bonus is focused on the element as well, so you're getting a lot less value per level with burst for raw. The first level does give you a nice chunk though, 8 straight raw for Charge Blade. Meanwhile, rank 5 is giving you 18. So you can tell that it doesn't, grow quite exponentially. There's an argument to run 1 burst in this set and lose 1 agitator, but with the monster feeling like it's enraged for half the fight, if not more, you're getting so much value out of that. And the final level of agitator is a pretty big jump forward for affinity as well as raw. But, it's worth considering at least 1 level of burst and dropping 1 agitator if you really want it. Now, we got to talk about another elephant, which is the critical jewel. This is providing us the 3 levels of critical boost. Very simply, your crits deal more damage. At level 3, that's 34% more critical damage. As we'll talk about, this build has essentially 100% affinity uptime. So, 34% increased damage on those critical hits the whole way. Very valuable. That essentially equates to 9% of a damage increase. Really good. What would you be running instead of critical boost? Well, in an impact vial style of Charge Blade, it'd be artillery, which is going to increase the damage of the vial pops of your attacks. The problem there is that we'd be giving up critical boost, which is, like I say, about a 9% damage increase. This is still good, not to say it isn't, but crit boost feels better, especially when you consider the fact that we're doing ED1, ED2 where most of our DPS is. That's 2 vial pops, by the way. Then you're resetting with a triangle and then doing ED1, ED2 again. Going into, amped element discharge and the follow-up after that, that's where most of the vial pops are going to be in that combo, but it's much slower. You'll only ever do that on a knockdown monster, and frankly, it's less DPS than doing ED1, ED2 reset, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of arguments to why artillery isn't going to get as much value as crit boost, and so we run crit boost. I should also mention that I am using the Exploiter Charm. This is providing 2 levels of weakness exploit to get us to 5 out of 5. And again, here are all the decorations for you to see. We have 2 antivirus decorations in the boots, and we have 3 physique in the gloves, so we can get those extra levels of constitution, again to help our stamina management and basically help us with maintaining maximum might. So let's put all of that together to calculate this set's effective raw for the weapon. We have that 225 base raw with about 50% uptime on agitator. So we'll kindly just say plus 10 raw, so that's 235. Then we'll add the white sharpness, which is 32% increase to all of the damage. That brings us to 310. Then we've got the affinity. So from the maximum might, the weakness exploit, the antivirus, and the half uptime from agitator, as well as the 5% base that the weapon just has. That brings us to 97.5% affinity. Now, that's not even allowing for the whole extra 20% weakness exploit on wounds, which we will be doing very often, as well as the maybe the monster will be enraged more than half the time detail. So we think it's fair to add 2.5% affinity on average to reach the cap. But most of the time you'll even be over that. So all of these crits that are always going off, they're dealing 34% more damage because of the level 3 crit boost. So if we take that 310 raw and times it by that 34%, that is 416 effective raw, which is indeed a very strong result. And this will work against every monster in the game very effectively. If you don't want to craft a load of elemental weapons, then this is going to be a great choice. In fact, a fantastic choice. But if you do want to go element, things are looking really good for Charge Blade in particular in this launch version of Wilds, so it's worth thinking about. So, what kind of weapons are we running for element Charge Blade? You already know I'm going to say it. It's an Artian Charge Blade. Whoa! As we're going to look at, the element potential with Artian weapons is nuts beyond every other option. But what element should you be running? It's fair to say that you can't craft all 5 in perfect versions instantly. My advice to you guys is to start with Dragon, and honestly, stick with Dragon the whole time if you wanna. because that would mean you only need to craft one element charge blade, which is a lot easier to sort of swallow than 5 of them, isn't it? The reason for that is because there are 6 tier 3 monsters that you'll be farming most for your decorations and of course your relics. That's Arkveld, Gore, Magala, and say the 4 apexes. Now, these values aren't really telling us what the data mine that just came out is going to tell us, but essentially what it amounts to is all of them in some way are vulnerable to dragon. In fact, dragon's going to be the best against Artian, and then you've also got Gore Magala, where it's going to be the best against him alongside fire. Then we start to look at the other 4, the 4 apexes, and wonder what are they weak to? Well, here we are with Ray Dow. It looks like he's weak to everything but thunder, obviously, with specifically in the head, ice being stand out. But then you look at Dragon and it's the 1 star across the board. This is the same for duna, except duna is weak to thunder in particular, but then Dragon will work really well here. New Udra, same thing. Dragon will work really well. And finally, Jin dahaad, optimal at the head would be fire, but Dragon across the board will do the job. So if you're going to make one element weapon, make it Dragon, you'll be fine. Right, let's talk about the ridiculous situation that is Charge Blade Artian. Let's take any element and just give it the attack infusion across the board, and we are going to start with 300 element before we do anything. But obviously, you're not leaving at that, you're going to upgrade it. And as you can see, each element boost is just a straight 50 element to the weapon. You could get 4 of these on a weapon and 1 sharpness boost, and that will be optimal. In my case, I've almost got optimal, but not quite. Either way, just that pushes it all the way up to 450. It'd be at 500 if I had that last roll. Just 2 of those would already put it as a top option for element. But then you've got 3 and a 4th boost on top of that. This is why it's just the obvious choice. Not to mention again the decoration slots. But yeah, to be clear, what you want on your Artian weapon for an element weapon is 1 sharpness boost and 4 element boost. That's the goal. What are we decorating the weapon with? Once again, we have crit boost, which is interesting. We'll talk about it. Once again, it's a charge blade, so you want magazine for the 2 levels of load shells as we talked about. But then the other thing is going to be important. You need razor sharp because it's going to massively increase the amount of time you don't need to actually use a whetstone. As you can see, level 1 is a 10%, then level 2 is a 25%. So that's a 15% difference. Then you go to level 3, it's a 50% chance. That's a 25% difference from 2 to 3. Each level is massive. So just 1 level is not amazing. 2 levels, very good. 3 levels, insane. We can only get 2 levels with this setup. And as you can see, I don't have a magazine / razor sharp dual. So unlucky me, but that's what I'm aiming for. Handicraft, second best option. Then for the dragon, we just have that razor sharp level, very important. Alongside the element of our choice, this is a dragon weapon, so we have dragon attack. If you had a water, you go with a stream duel, or fire attack, so on and so on. But now let's talk about the gear that we're wearing. We have the Guardian Ebony Helm, providing us 2 levels of burst, the Arc Vulcan chest with 1 weakness exploit on it, the Guardian Arkveld gloves, so we have the weakness exploit 2 levels, then as you should have expected, 2 Gore in the waist and legs, for 1 level of antivirus, the Gore 2-piece set obviously, and a bit of constitution. Then the charm is the burst charm. Let's talk about what we're running and the skills that it provides. So there are my decorations for you to take a look at. But with this, we're getting the maxed out weakness exploit, the constitution, the max might, antivirus to go with the Gore 2-piece, and 5 levels of burst. As we said in the raw section, this is really good for element weapons that can get it. Continuously landing hits increases your attack and elemental attack. This is going to give you a lot of bonus to both raw, but especially element as it's going. And again, as you're attacking with the chainsaw effect with the power axe mode, alongside the vial pops, that's a physical hit, a vial pop, and 4 chainsaw hits every attack. Double that for ED2. Basically, burst is going with a charge blade with power axe mode, so you're getting this real value constantly. What might be more confusing than that, obviously, would be the fact that we're still running crit boost here instead of something like critical element. To be honest with you, we're not convinced critical element's actually working, at least not in this version, or properly anyway. I did some tests under strict conditions against the training dummy with both, right? And crit boost kept coming out essentially on top. Ultimately, what matters to us for this moment is that crit boost is providing more output, so it's the one that we pick. So once again, let's look at how this all comes together for its effective raw. The base raw starts at 205 this time, but then we're going to have 5 levels of burst, giving it 18 the whole damn time we're fighting. So that's 223 raw. Then we slap on the white sharpness, of course, for 32% increased damage. That brings us to 294. Then we have our affinity, which is going to amount to 90% from maximum might, weakness exploit, antivirus, and at least the 5% base on the Artian weapon. In my case, I've got an extra 5% though, so it'd be 95% for me while I have this awkward rolled weapon. But with crit boost, we have that 34% increase to the damage. If we're kind and say 90% uptime then, that's more like a 31% damage increase. So that's 294 times 1.31. That brings us to 385 effective roll, which is really good on an element weapon. But then comes the element. Now to show this, unfortunately I can't be perfectly accurate, so we need to do a tiny bit of math for that. But basically, they don't show the raw element, but you can turn on the raw attack. If you don't know, there's this option in the menu, weapon attack power display. You can choose to turn off bloat and go for a display without coefficient. This means you see the true raw of your attacks, which is a lot simpler for this math. I'd like to do that for the element, but we can't. So what I'll do is I'll activate burst and just get it maxed out real quick, and then just look at the menu so you can literally see it. So let's get swing in, and there we go. So 740 element is the bloated element it shows me when burst is going. Thankfully, there's universal bloat for element, which is 10xing the number. So all we have to do is divide by 10. So 740 divided by 10 is 74. We give that the white sharpness element modifier, which is 15% damage increase. That's 74 times 1.15. That's 85 true element. Ultimately, we're reaching really high element numbers already. And remember, this is only with 3 element boost on my weapon compared to 4, so it would be even higher. But I imagine you're wondering about that last set that I mentioned. This is the Dragon Convert setup, because you can get some extra bonuses for specifically Dragon. There's this skill, Convert Element. After taking element damage, temporarily this will give you Dragon Element effects. Level 1, while active, this means you're dealing extra dragon damage after dealing enough element damage. As well as slightly increasing dragon attack. This just gets higher and higher at the higher levels. At level 3, that's an extra 180 dragon element specifically, and you can activate it by doing perfect guards. So for dragon builds with charge blade in particular, you could really push the element for dragon, which is an exciting concept. So we do think that concept has a lot of potential, but right now I can't confidently say that that's absolutely what you should be doing with your dragon sets right now, compared to the just more universal, awesome element set we have that you just run also on dragon. And with the tier 3 6 monsters, the Apexes, Gore and Arkveld, their element weaknesses not being great, it's another thing to consider. But just to give you the set, if we were going to run this, it's 4 Gore piece, and then we have the Arkvulcan gloves, all in beta. We run the chain charm for the burst levels, and this is how my skills come out. You'll note that we get 1 level of flayer out of this, which is really nice, but we're not running weakness exploit in this setup. Thanks to the 4 piece of Gore, you're actually going to get some raw bonuses when you do the antivirus cleanse. And with this set, we'll actually get 1 level of coalescence and convert element on top, which is pretty nice, allowing us to reach some seriously high dragon element in particular. If you want to look at the decorations, here they are. But this is something we want to explore a little bit more for the time being. But there you have it. That's my build video for Chargeblade, at least for the launch version of Wilds. We do expect to be back with update 1, since they have hinted that there's more to it than just Mizutsune, so we're hopeful for that. But I do hope this video and all the information in it has helped you. We put a lot of work into the understanding of all of this for the various weapon guides and builds that we're currently producing. Expect a lot more of this type of content then in the coming days for many weapons. If you do appreciate it then, please drop a like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.